leave school at 15 and you beat off 200 other applicants to win an engineering apprenticeship at the National Engineering Laboratory in East Kilbride.
That's because of the aunt who worked there and got me in.
Well, it's a start. Your heart was still in music, but you do well all the same. You passed 2 city and guilds before you're 17, but at the weekends you get out your guitar. In 1969, you're playing the church halls of Glasgow in a group called Stumble.
And sometimes we even got paid.
Band members from 24 years ago, fellow stumblers Alex Baird, Alan Wright, Kenny Ireland and Gordon Apicella.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Socrates Café Podcast. This podcast today is a little different. We're going to be talking about music, maybe some of the philosophy within music, but it's more just going to be a conversation about music and more on the aspect of the guitar side of things. So I've got with me my dad as the guest. So he's a fountain of knowledge when it comes to the guitar. I'm always picking his brains, and he's always got new information, stuff for me to learn. So I'm hoping that anybody watching this will learn a thing or two as well. And I'm hoping that I'll learn a wee thing or two as well while doing it. So, my dad's called Alan, and he got into guitar when he was really young. I got into music when I was really young, but it was because I came from a bit of a musical family. My dad played the guitar, my auntie played the piano and was a music teacher. My older brother played the guitar, so it was just something that kind of naturally fell into place for me. But for you, how did it start then, Dad? And I know that you were 14 when you got your first guitar, I think, if I'm right in saying that, but how is it that you get into playing the guitar, and how did you kind of come about getting that first guitar? Also, when you got into playing guitar, what music was it that you were listening to at the time that like triggered that? Oh, I want to get a guitar. Feeling within you, and who did you try and emulate as soon as you got one? And I guess what at the end, what would be that first song that you learned once you did get one?
Well, I'm not too sure at the beginning. I know I had a cheap acoustic, which my parents would have bought, which is one of the very hardest guitars to learn to play because they're really budget and the strings were dead high. So I had that, and then my sister got a homemade guitar from someone she was going out with.
Okay.
And tried that, and we used to have, I think Mark Knopfler copied me a wee bit. There was a bit when my parents had a radiogram, and you could plug into the back of it with your guitar lead with a bit saying PU for pickup. And she'd come in it was the lounge, I suppose, where the piano was, and I was sitting on a couch fast asleep, and she thought I'd been electrocuted. Because it was plugged into this radiogram. Anyway, so that was that. So the
Did that kind of act like your first stamp?
Aye.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's what we used to do. You could plug it into the back of radios. I'm not really sure what they're for, whether it's a microphone or what, but that was that. And the records about were the Stones and the Beatles. And I think the first 2 records I bought was the Searchers, Needles and Pins, and there was a Pink Floyd one. I don't know if it was Arnold Lane or See Emily Play. It was one of the two, a single anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think it was just some pals from school. Kenny, one of my pals, and the singer, Gordon. His older brother had a band, and we just started practicing together, and then played like in it's like guides, dances, and local
Ballrooms and things like that.
well, small ones, more youth club sort of dances.
Right.
And the first two songs that I remember, I suppose, were Status Quo, Pictures of Matchstick Men, and the Monkeys' Last Train to Clarksville. And that was a guide dance in a hall. And we never really had any transport, so I had a 5-watt amplifier, a wee combo, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a Watkins Rapier I had, guitar, and I wore a top hat and a satin shirt, and
Is that your
probably
gimmick?
and took the bus down to Rutherglen to go to the gig.
You wore a
So,
top hat.
aye,
Was that your gimmick for on stage or something?
I suppose so, likely just being a bit silly. And it was either, I think it was a red or a purple satin shirt. We had one of each. So it was just the local gigs like that we did.
Was there quite a big crowd for it back then? Like, you know, I guess like today's world, you've got so much things to do for entertainment, but back then it would be either going out or staying in and watching the very limited channels you'd have on the radio or on the TV. So, was there quite a lot?
We didn't do an awful lot socialising. I mean, you had a youth club. And that was it. Alec, the drummer of the band, he went on to play in an electric folk band called Contraband, and he moved to England. They did well, but I've not really heard from him for maybe about 10 years now. But anyway, his mother knew someone. We were in the Scouts, and there was a Scout hall near where Kenny and Alec lived.
Right.
And his mum, Alec's mum, managed to get permission for us to go in and practice in the Scout hall on a Saturday. So we would tend to do that from about 10 till about 4 or something. And we'd never get any problems because it was in where the hall was, it wasn't far from houses, but it was far enough and we didn't have loud amps, so we never caused any nuisance. Although the first gig we did, the guide one, we get told to turn down, and you're lucky if it was a 5-watt amp. There was no volume in it at all. I think they just didn't like the idea of all these people in this hall.
Rock and roll changing the world, you know, people set in their ways and they're used to the old Frank Sinatra and whatnot. And this new age came about. It's just kind of shook everybody, especially because it became a trend. And, well, the rest is history, I guess. You know, it didn't just become a trend, it stuck on.
Well,
I mean, so what age?
Well, that would be about age 16. As
Yeah,
I say,
I was going to say, what age was that? Kind of like, when did you feel that you had your own band, because you obviously play guitar and you had bands you play with, and you would be the lead guitarist because you kind of focused a lot on
the wee band that we got was myself, Kenny, Alec the drummer, Gordon the singer, and there was a rhythm guitarist, but he couldn't really play guitar, but he was just one of our pals. So he was in the band for a few years, and as I say, Gordon was a singer, and I remember going up to his house, and I played the House of Rising Sun, on one of his brother's pals, because they had an amp in the bedroom and stuff. And of course they were saying, "Oh, very good, very good." It was quite rotten, but it was good fun. And I remember once, I don't know why, because I would never do it now. I took a guitar and my wee amp to a party that we'd been invited to, and I played like a couple of Shadows songs. I don't know why, but it went down all right. So that was it for a few years.
Was that your first gig then? Would that be what you consider your first gig at that party?
No, the one in the Guide Hall was the first gig, as I say, around about, because the Status Quo song, Pictures of Manly Men, that was in the chart, so that gives you an idea when. So that was about 67 or 68.
Right.
And we did that for a few years, just played we did one, and we finished up a few years later at Scout Hall, because I stopped. We were starting to... The music at the time it went from Stones to like John Mayall. I think Kenny bought the first one, the Blues Breakers one, and I get the second one with Peter Green, Hard Road, when he was with John Mayall's Blues Breakers. And we listened to that, and that was us. We would practice, and every song would last about 15 minutes, because it then moved on to like Cream, and their songs just had a beginning and an ending, and a long bit in the middle.
Yeah.
And that was about it, really, for a few years. And then I'd started going out, I suppose, my first girlfriend, and decided I could start to get too... It was moving on then to more pop, like what's the stuff, like Rider Right Swan. Who's that again?
You tell me.
Anyway, I've forgotten.
The music was changing. It wasn't. What was in there?
From Hendrix.
played?
We were doing like Hendrix stuff, Deep Purple. So it was a pop, but it was rock at the time. Then it started changing, and it was starting to get kind of poppy. And as I say, I was starting going out with this female, and I said, right, I'm going to stop, because I felt we weren't getting anywhere. So the last gig, I'll need to try and find. I'll still get the ticket. I had one of the tickets. And it was at Scout Hall where we used to practice. And I think, Jim Muir was in the band at that point. And
I was about to ask that, because I was going to say, like, for anybody watching, when my dad says Jim Muir, he's talking about Midger, who was a singer in the band Ultravox. So he was quite big in the 80s. But obviously he was, he grew up in Glasgow, in Scotland, in Cambuslang, and you know when you were in the band with him. So what age were you round about then, and how did that band sort of kind of come to its end, and him go off in a different direction, and you, I guess, becoming a family man?
They wanted a replacement because they were going to keep playing. Because at that point, let me think, I think Gordon had left. He'd moved, I think he moved down Dumfries somewhere. Because when we actually moved, the first house we had in Minigaff, Gordon was one of the guys that came to fit the carpets when we were getting the carpet fitted. Because I thought, that looks like Gordon. And after a few minutes, I thought, it is.
So you didn't, it wasn't like you'd phoned him up to come and do a job for you. It just turned out it was him.
A carpet shop. But anyway, so Gordon had left. We'd had a few changes, because another person that was in the band that was good was a harp player, mouth organ. And he was in it for a wee while, but we started getting poppy. Oh, I can still see me in the picture here, but I don't see you now. So we had a mouth organist for a wee while, and then we went back to just the two guitars, and so Jim was singing, and so anyway, after I'd left that, they were trying to get a replacement, and I'm not sure who was new. There was a keyboard player, and they got a keyboard player in, and that worked for a wee while. Then I'm not sure what happened with regarding Jim, because the story that he sort of said was Slick were looking for a keyboard player, and and Jim had gone with the lad, the keyboard player. Then he was obviously playing guitar a wee bit, and said that he got asked instead of the keyboard player. So I'm not too sure the actual story, but he then joined Slick, and I thought he'd been called Midge because there was Jim Muir and Jim Scott were two of the lads. They were from near enough the same street, and they were friends. And so Jim Muir was classed as wee Jim because he was shorter, and the other lad was, well, like Big Jim, but it was Jim and wee Jim. And I thought, oh, that's why he's been called Midge. But he said it was the other way around. It was just they'd turned his name backwards. But anyway, he did well. So it was T-Rex, by the way. That's who I was thinking of this Rider-Waite song.
All right, okay.
So the music was getting a bit like that, and I just went off it. I wasn't looking for stardom, just looking to be not moving on from Cream and Hendrix and stuff like that.
Play where you want to play, I guess, and just to stay true to yourself.
And then I'm trying to think. Jim was Slick for a few years, and then I think he was getting a bit disillusioned, and I'd met up with him briefly, and we were thinking of maybe starting another band, a bit like Wishbone Ash, with the two guitars and playing harmony stuff. But it never came off, and he must have gone back down to London. He must have been home at that point and went back down to London. So, and he's done very well. So that was basically it. And then I had the chance of joining a band called Capricorn, and it was really, I think Kenny had maybe roaded. I don't know how we got to know them, to be honest. But I think Kenny had roaded for them, and anyway, I get the chance of playing with them, and it was just a pop band. And it was quite good. We did some quite good gigs, but again, I wasn't too mad in the music. Then I left them because I wasn't very happy and joined another band. But again, it was pop, and we were playing clubs. Well, it was called Shuffles at those days. I don't know whether that's a garage now. I don't really know, but it was on the tail end of Sucky Hall Street. And we played, one of the gigs we did that was good was a place called the Locarno, which was popular slightly in the 60s, but it had a revolving stage. And
all right, okay.
We were one of the bands that was on. I think there was a group called Magnet. So they were playing, and then we were on after them. So we were all on the other side of the stage. And it was a students' ball. So we all get dressed up in our pyjamas. And of course, it revolved round, and we're just prancing about with our pyjamas and played. So that was quite fun. And that ended up the same thing. It was after a few years and a couple of people changed. I had met your mum, and I said, "Oh, look, I'm looking to finish now," because we weren't writing any music or anything. It was just all covers.
Right.
And
So it
that
had a
was
very
it.
kind of limited sort of range of where it could go
You had to write your
in
own
the term
stuff.
of finances, you know.
Because, and again, we're just average players. We weren't anything spectacular. I mean, we could play doing covers, and the idea of covers was you had to be a bit like Slick, I suppose. You had to be well rehearsed. So you would spend maybe one night just doing a couple of songs so that
Yeah.
everything was spot on with the drummer or spot on with who's playing the solo and when it starts and stops. So
So I
that
guess
was
there'd be a
me.
lot of competition at that time, you know. So you would have had to be, especially like when it's your own stuff. People, you know, little mistakes here and there, people won't notice. But when you are doing covers and there's that, you know, a lot of other bands out there competing for that same market, then you do really need to be pretty precise. You need to be able to play it, and like because people coming to listen to it, they've only listened to the record, so they want to hear it as pretty much as close to the records as it
Well,
can be.
initially it was just wee gigs we were doing, but by the time I would say the last couple of bands, Capricorn, and then um, we were through an agency, or we've been on a couple of agencies. So, and we had a lad that had his own van, so he drove us, and we used to. Well, if we were going far, if we were going up to Perth, we we used to get like a crate 24 Newcastle Brown Ale, and we'd all have a packet of cigarettes, and we'd just sit in the back of the van. I mean, a few bottles of beer,
The rock and
um,
roll lifestyle.
rock and roll, but there was no nonsense regarding weed or anything like that. It was just beer and cigarettes. So, so again, that was that till, as I say, I met your mum, and then gave up the playing. Um, then what happened after that? I think.
Well, I was going to ask because something I remember was that you told me about a guitar case making business that you wanted to start. Now, to me, that sounds like something you do after your kind of music careers, kind of, or when you're not looking at the playing as a career anymore, as your you know money maker. So did that come about round a bit then after you met mum, or was that like
That was after that.
before David was born, or after, a long time after?
Oh, aye, it was about 85, so Jane would have been born. She'd have been
Oh,
about
really?
one.
Oh, okay, so that's
Um,
quite a bit after then.
aye, aye. I was in a sort of, I'm going to say a club band, but we played clubs. But I joined up with a singer who played keyboard, and I still feel it's cheating because it was backing tracks. So I would play the normal guitar, and he'd play a bit of keyboard and sing, and I would do wee bits of backing vocals. And we did clubs doing that, and it was all right. But I suppose that you enjoy gigging and playing, but it wasn't. I missed the full band situation, so I'd done that anyway for a few years, and then stopped that. And the job that I was doing was in the post office. As your gran had a post office, and she was looking to retire. And at that time, I was working in the steelworks as an electrician. And because I was playing in a band, I thought this is awkward because I can't do shifts in the steelworks if I'm playing in a band. So I had a chance of going into the post office, and I did that for a few years. And your gran wanted to retire, so I then applied and took over the post office.
Right.
But after a few years, they were shutting post offices down, and so I then I got paid compensation, and I wasn't sure what to do. So that's when I thought about making cases. So Kenny had a case that he bought from a shop, and I said, right, I'll make you a new one because
No,
I
I'm
said, I'll make you
breaking
one.
my camera.
I was going to try and make them with plastic and all sorts of things, but it ended up it was just going to be a standard case. So I took his case and took it partially to bits, just to see how the material was cut at the corners.
How them put
So,
together and stuff. Yeah. Just kind of back engineering it then.
well, it was annoying. I bought the wood. I bought a little staple gun and a compressor and all the bits and bobs, and I was registered VAT and everything. And I'd been round shops prior to getting all the equipment, and they said, "Oh yes, we'll buy some off you." And we got an idea of a price, only to find that after I'd started making a couple and knowing how to do it, the shop said, "Oh, we're not really needing any just now. We've got."
Mm.
So, so that
So
was
it's
that.
getting that contract intact is important.
Well, that was it. Kenny got the one and only case that survived. So, and he
Oh,
still,
really?
so that's quite good.
Well,
So his
that's
was a
cool.
blue one.
Didn't know that Kenny still had one.
Aye. So that was that, and then I started another full-time job. So, after 2 years, so 85 to 87, and in between that, I went to college to be a TV engineer. But
Right, okay.
I was in my early 30s, and a lot of the guys in the class were 16 and 17. And you would go out at the break, and there'd be a Coke machine or a sweet machine. And they're just young Neds, and they're nearly rocking it over onto the floor to try and get money out of it or get the sweets. I thought, this is nonsense. So I ended up, I gave
Wasn't
up.
for you then?
And then I applied for a service and did that. And after a year, because I thought I'll give it 2 years, I wasn't awfully keen in it. There was areas in it that would be all right, but I thought. But after a year, I got the job as the maintenance electrician there, and it just moved on, so that was good. So, so the guitar thing fell aside. I ended up, I gave the compressor to one of the guys that I worked beside. The second time I went back there, I moved about, as you know, from Glasgow to Newton Stewart, and then I worked at Dumfries for a wee while, and then anyway, so that was that. So 87, I'm trying to think. Oh, we met Rab, a lad who must have been looking for a guitarist. So it was me, Kenny, and I'm trying to think who the singer was. Why, it was Stevie the drummer.
Drummer. Yeah.
He sang, and Rab had got us a gig. This was before he came in briefly and gave us some gigs, but it was clubs, and we said, we can't. We played in, is it Garthamlock? And it's just next door to Easterhouse, and it was wild. And we did, what do you call it? Need Your Love So Bad. And that was the only song that they liked. The rest,
Oh, really?
well, we were doing blues stuff. You know, it wasn't a club band. It wasn't.
So they weren't used to that. They
That was
expected a certain
Fleetwood
type of
Mac.
music, and that was the only one they
We
could
were
have.
lucky we never got killed that night. Well, the singer, we had a female singer, and her car got tanned, and her
No.
car radio got stolen. But it was wild. So he ended up doing club stuff, and we didn't like it. And then latterly after that, Rab came back in, and then we started playing the blues stuff again. And that was good.
So, see, when it comes to it, like, see, when you, because obviously the blues stuff is that's your bread and butter. I know that from going in and jamming with you. What, like, see, was there any particular guitarists? I know you mentioned Peter Green and Clapton, John Mayall, but was there any sort of, because you mentioned Knopfler earlier, now he has a very different style of playing guitar. This is just
Who
the
was
one,
that?
kind of, the Dire Straits guy that you mentioned.
Martin Knopfler. Aye, well,
Aye.
I
But
think
he picks the guitar. Now everybody has
I
their
know
own
what
kind
you're
of
going to say.
philosophy or way of playing the guitar.
He learned
You
some
use a plectrum,
type
so
stuff, and when we learned that Sultans of Swing, I could do most of it, but there's a wee phrase in the second part of the solo where he's picking, and to do that properly, you really need to pick it. But I was doing it with a plectrum, and if I practiced a night or two before a gig, I could get it, but I would quite often make a mistake. Now, if
I
we
assume
played it,
it's something
I
you
would
need
just
to
I
continue.
would just jam round that phrase, and
Mm.
but those days I couldn't quite improvise as much to make it seem that you've forgotten or made a mistake or whatever. It's like doing a stumble. I can't play that phrase. I used to get it nearly right, and I thought, nah, there's got to be some simple way of doing it. So I
Well, that's the
found,
question. See, does Freddie King, did he use his fingers, or did he use a plectrum, or how did he play? Because that's, for anybody watching who doesn't know the song, if you check it out, it's called The
I
Stumble.
think,
Lots
I
of
think
people have done versions of it, but it's originally done by Freddie King. So was
I
he
think
somebody who used his fingers, or was he a
I
plectrum
think he
user?
used a thumb pick, and I'm not sure if he just picked with a plectrum because I don't tend to watch too closely that part. But he did have. I'm sure he had a thumb pick. But again, latterly, in the last 20 years, certainly Freddie King, like all the Kings, you had Albert King, Freddie King, and BB King. Freddie King, Clapton copied a lot and made it more modern because the guitar that I tend to use is one similar to what he had.
Right.
And there's a selector switch on it that if you turn it to the second position, you get the exact same tone that he got with, like, say, songs like Going Down. So that was good. But I do like the guitar crunching a bit more. I mean, Freddie's style is good, but it's quite clean. Um,
Mhm.
and I like the sort of Gibson sound being a wee bit more raunchy, but not too distorted. But aye, so but guitarist, it was really, I like Clapton. I suppose Clapton was my first choice. Not as keen on him now. I liked him. Well, between John Mayall and
Green.
a few years after Cream, but not much. But once he moved to playing a Strat, I don't know whether he deliberately wanted to change his style, but when he played the Strat, it was a different sound. And
See, that's all I've ever remembered. Whenever I see any videos of Clapton play, it's videos of him in the Strat. I've not seen many earlier videos, so a good question to kind of ask you on, like when we're talking about styles, like types of guitars, because you've got a few, and I know you've got different. You've got Strat, you've got Gibson, you've got the SG. So you've had others over the years as well that you've sold on, and so you've experienced kind of playing lots of different type of guitars. So a good question that I was just going to ask you there is, if you were on a, people say, like, if you're on a desert island and all that, and you can only pick like 10 albums, if you could only pick one guitar, and you were given an amp, and you could only pick one guitar, what guitar would you go with as your kind of ultimate overall guitar? That throughout all your experience at the age of that age.
likely the Freddie King one, the 345, because the they made it a bit like the accident happened with Peter Green's guitar. He gets a particular sound, and what happened was they reckon the bass pickup was rewound because it had been faulty, and they think the magnet get put in back to front, and
Okay.
that when you put the two pickups together, they sound out of phase, so you get this sort of quacky sound. I altered it on one of my guitars a few years ago on the Les Paul, but the 345 apparently I read that they did them as standard on the treble pickup. So the pickups that were on my 345 had been changed when I bought it second hand, because most of my guitars had always been what you call player grade guitars, and
Mhm.
they were never worth a fortune. And it was the not quite the norm, but it wasn't out of place for people to add pickups and do alterations.
Yeah.
So I had flipped the magnet round on the bridge pickup on the 345, and that's probably my favourite guitar. So, and a decent amp, whether a wee Marshall 50 or a Marshall whatever, because they seem to be going down now. 20-watt amps seem to be the latest thing. And you just go through the mixing desk and then through the PA. So you don't have these big Marshall stacks. So that would be the guitar I would take.
Oh well.
And some backing tracks, because it wouldn't sound good just me.
Well, you need something else. Well, I was going to. That moves on nicely to my next question, is because nowadays I know you still play, now and then with your old pals and new pals that you've made kind of along the way. But you also go into the studio with me and my brother David, so your other son, and your pal Kenny, who you also mentioned earlier on, who's in many bands with you, who's been your kind of best pal throughout life. How does it feel now, like kind of today, still being able to play music? And I mean, is that something you're quite chuffed with, that the rest of your family kind of became quite musical?
Well, it's a hobby. I mean, I think I had hoped that, because David had a wee spell, well, you both have had a wee spell playing in a band, and you with Chris and some of his pals had a wee spell, and I sort of hoped, I thought, well, maybe I can get you all to join wee bands and do what I did years ago, and up to yourself how often you want to play. But, well, David's got family now, and that's slightly limiting him a bit for going out. And I thought you might have taken up, but you can never say never. But it's a hard life in a way, gigging, and maybe I shouldn't have gigged as much as I did in the early years. But that's life.
It is. I mean, I remember when we were young, when we were playing in our band, we started kind of the gigging scene when we were like 16, 17, so we weren't even like old enough to drive and get our stuff about. So if it was a gig and we had to bring our own equipment, then we were relying on people like yourself, or like say Chris's family, or Alan's family, or Dave's family, people in the band to get us from A to B with all our kit. And then it never really kind of took off as a permanent thing. But things have changed, I guess. Music's changed in the way that you make it. I mean, you can do pretty much. I mean, what you could do, I guess back in your day, write and record a song, you can just input into a computer these days with the right sample packs and the right plugins and things, and make it sound authentic, like it's an actual band playing. So things have changed, and I know I dipped my toes a wee bit into the making of kind of electronic music and stuff, but it's not the same. It's never the same as actually playing, and that's that's for me what I love about it is being in the moment rather than overthinking things. Like when you're making music on a laptop or something, you're sitting there and you're planning out the next part, and you're listening to a wee phrase over and over and over, and you're like, there's something wrong, like right with that. Whereas when you're just in the studio playing a song, you start and there's a finish point, unless you go drastically wrong and make a huge mistake where it's like, no, we need to start the song again. Then you just play through the mistakes and don't worry about them. And usually, when you listen back to a recording, let's say I've made a wee recording of it, and it usually sounds all right, and you're like, I could have, if I was such a perfectionist, I could have went, no, no, let's stop, and then stop the recording there and ruined a full song. And I guess that's one of the kind of joys of live music, is that when you're in the audience, you don't really notice the wee minor mistakes that, as a musician, you notice quite a
Well,
lot.
the
Yep.
more years you've played, and if you've got a sort of set band, you can make a mistake and play around it, or improvise around it, so that the band might know like they're playing something different. Because if you're playing songs, it tends to be the same, and it's more or less the same solo, unless it's one just for jamming in. But if you're playing a song that you've all got your set pieces, so if I muck
Yeah.
up part of the solo, I know where it's going next. As long as I keep in with the bass and the drums, you can just jam it. So that's where it's handy. Whereas if I've got a pal, Rab, he's more or less got a music studio in his house, and he does that. We've been up a couple of times just jamming with him, and he said, "Oh, plug it in. Don't worry about your sound, because I can add sounds onto guitar later." And I said, "I know, but I'll need to bring my pedal board for me to get a sound just now. You just want the notes playing. I know you can alter it all, but I need to hear a decent guitar sound if you want me to play lead." And I know,
You're feeling it at the same time, and there's maybe not going to be that same energy or same effort put into it if you're not feeling it at the same time. It's like you're saying, if he's just wanting you to come up and play clean into something, then it's not going to feel the same. It's not going to come across the same way. Yeah, you might be able to add effects onto it, but when you're playing it and you've got that sound and you're hearing that at that moment, then and you're playing, even if it's just playing along to a backing track, there's more energy of you going into it. That's certainly
no,
I'd feel anyway.
it's and you tend to be doing the exact same solos, so you're not improvising, because you just don't have the right frame of mind for it. But if you were doing a recording of a song, then I suppose in modern times that's where you can say, "Oh, don't worry, just keep going. If you make a mistake, just keep going, because when we come to check it later, we can chop a bit out and just add it in." And that's just the modern way. I've never been into being able to do that. But anyway, he likes doing that sort of stuff, so keeps him
I like
happy.
it too. I like producing music. I mean, even David's pal, he had sent off some stuff to get like mixed and mastered down, and I'd asked him just to send me the stem tracks just so I could play around with it, that kind of side of things, the music production, and taking this raw track and adding EQs, compressors, and maybe things like guitar rig or whatever, and just boosting it up a bit. But that is fun. I know it's not something that you've looked into a lot. I know you made a lot of kind of MIDI tracks, I guess, or you had all the kind of software for that when you.
Well, yes and no. We altered them. So we did. It was the MIDI track. It was like the band had already played the music, and all we did was say, right, turn the guitar down to 0, alter the drums so that it's got either reverb or, because you could get about 20 different drum kits, and you just pick one and say, oh, that sounds good. So we just remixed it. That's what we were doing. So you would shut the guitar off, or maybe keep a rhythm going, and then shut off the solo, or just mute the solo. And that's what Bob tends to do. He likes doing that. I had re-recorded. It took me a week. We had floppy disks that we used originally, and then I got a compact flash, and it meant we could put like 300 or 400 songs on this one like a USB stick, but the earlier version that used to get used in cameras and things, so you could get like an 8 gig or a 16 gig.
The wee flash drives. I know you mean.
So that's what we use, a digital Tascam unit. And touch wood, it's never broken or let us down. I think the only time we had a problem, our main feed for the power, someone had accidentally turned it off. It was at the front of the stage for some reason, and that's the only time the machine sort of froze and we had to turn it all off. And but again, that's still cheating. And I prefer playing like a full band rather than the club. The club thing's good. And
was that over? I mean, I was going to ask you, like, because obviously now you're retired. Is that?
We cut it back. We cut back the gigging. I mean, Bob likes the gigging, and I think he's got some ideas about maybe playing. I think he'd done a couple of wee things with an acoustic, like old folks' homes. So I think he'd thought about doing something like that. I like to annoy him and say, you're your Glasgow Daniel O'Donnell, you know. But anyway, so I can see maybe latterly, because there's a gig we did, but we're doing it later next month, where it's up 2 flights of stairs, and it's just killing my knees. The minute you carry a heavy weight, it's just sore. I mean, I still do my gym in the house. Tomorrow morning's one of them, where I do a rowing machine and a bike. Fine, I can do that fine. But I can't walk with a heavy weight, especially upstairs. Anyway, he bought a new PA, Behringer, and it's great. It's like a hi-fi. The speakers are only about 15 inches by about 6 inches, and there's no weight in it. So we're going to try that, but we still need what I call my box. It's got all the electronic stuff, because that's where my player is for all the music. But
it seems, I don't know, just for me it seems odd that you still use that, because I know you.
Well, it's only 2 of us, so.
But you'd think that you'd just be able to switch over to a phone these days with all the backing tracks, and then have, if he has his phone, or you just have a phone specifically for the gigs, but have all the tracks on your phone and his phone as well, and that way if one fails, you've got a backup.
You could, but I suppose we were frightened, because there was a guy years ago in the first house we had in Rutherglen. I'd bought a Vox AC30, and I wanted what they called top boost. In the early days when the Beatles and the Stones all used these, like a 2x12 combo amp, and it was a Vox AC30. And the ones that were the most popular ones with a top boost control on it. Anyway, the one I got didn't have that, and there was a lad he worked in a music shop in Glasgow, in a radio spares shop in Glasgow. Then he started. It was above the bus station in Anderson. I think that's all away now. I think it's up near the top end of Hope Street. Anyway, he came out to the house. I got a printed circuit for it, and bought the resistors and everything, and he helped wire it up. But I've lost where I'm going with this now.
Don't worry about it. Look, I mean, we're getting to kind of almost the hour mark, so like before I kind of ask the last kind of question that I wanted to ask, I wanted to kind of go back a bit to when you were, well, not specifically the time when you were playing with Midge, but because years spring forward, and you said had quite a successful career and was on that show. It's not on anymore, but if anybody from the UK watching,
Well, this is your
wants to know
night.
what this is your life, and you were asked
Oh,
to
that's
go on it.
I know that
This is
was good
really,
fun.
and for Mid, so what? I mean, could you tell me about that? Like, what was the whole process like going on and turn up at a TV studio, and well, I guess him not even knowing that you were going to
Well,
pop out behind the curtain.
there was a phone call I'd got at work, and I thought it was a wind up because it was someone asking blah blah blah. Do you know so and so? And they said who it was, and I said, right. So I hung up because they managed to get. I don't know how they managed to find out, but they got where I worked and phoned up at my work, and I said no. Give me a number and I'll call you back because I'm no. I didn't. I just thought it was a wind up.
Right.
And anyway, I phoned them back, and when I came off, I said, "I've been asked to go on this. This is your life, you know." So I ended up. It was genuine. So it was myself, Kenny, and Alec, who was a drummer, and Gordon, who was our original singer. Were all invited down. So we got a plane, and we were in Glasgow Airport, and because we didn't know the script with everything, because we must have been first class, because we were in the waiting area before you went on the plane. There was a fridge, and they said, "Oh, you can help yourself to a drink." And of course, the drink's full of wee bottles of this and that. So we had that. I went down, we were in the front, and you had all the metal cutlery to get your dinner and everything in the plane. Then I can't remember the hotel we're at, but we're in a hotel, and Gordon, who liked a drink, he was having a jolly old time, but I was sort of worried and panicking because I thought, we can't go on drunk because we're going to be in the toilet, and they'll just say, no, you're not going on. So, and of course, you all had to speak for about a minute or whatever. And Alec, he had a good one. He had some tape that Jim had given him a few years ago of something he must have been writing or recording, and had given Alec a cassette. And I told a wee story, but they actually cut it out, which was a shame. So it must have been really good. Anyway, we went on, and it was good fun. And the guy that was in, I'm trying to think, it was one of the bands Jim was in between Ultravox at the time. There was a couple of wee bands he was involved with, and this guy was going on, and he was saying to Alec, "What you? No, it wasn't him. He was there, but it was what's his name? It was Bob Geldof. I think he was going on first, and we were, of course, at the backstage, and he said, 'What do you think of my hair?' And Alec just made some comment, you know, 'What do you think?' You know, he let me swore at him, you know. Anyway, but it was good fun. And then the next guy was, I don't know whether he was a drummer with one of the bands that Jim had been playing with, and we were talking about Duff Beer, you know, the what's his name, the Simpsons. And I think he thought it was. Well, I don't know whether it was available at that time, but we said, "Oh, that's Duff Beer. You want that stuff?" And this guy, "Oh, right." But no, it was good fun, as I say. And then we all
Was
went.
it like an after party? Because I was going to say, like, Because I
Yeah,
never
well,
asked about that. I don't even ask you about that. Like, was there like a gathering afterwards after the whole big
there
reveal?
was,
And
he did come over, but in some ways it's a bit like a funeral. You're all in your own wee group, and then Jim wandered about talking to various groups of people, and he came over and he spent a bit of time talking with us, and it was good fun. But and then we were able to have a drink then because there was no worry of making a mess of things. But of course they just chop it out if they don't like what you've said, you know.
well, that's it. They got time constraints, I guess. And I guess we're approaching that right now. It's almost an hour. So,
All right,
um,
I'm up,
look,
kicking out.
I just want to say, well, one wee last kind of question then is what do you kind of see for your life now? You're in your 70s. You play with us. You still kind of play with your blues band every now and then. You still play with Bob with the club band. Do you see yourself continuing it for just basically until you can't anymore, or is
Well,
are you going to go in your camper van and do it in adventurous and kind of take a break
yeah,
away where you're taking a long period away, or are you just going to keep at it?
you rock till you drop, basically.
I
Um,
like that one.
Club band, I don't see me going on too long. I mean, I liked it, and I've been with Bob for I don't know how long, but 25 years. So done well, and he's done well putting up with me. But no, I suppose the family band and the wee blues band with Kenny, that'll keep going. Um, I would like to get away a bit more with the van, but we'll see. I'll need to see. We'll get too much stuff just now. I need to maybe get the big one away and just keep the wee one.
Hmm.
But no, still keep playing, but I might say there's going to be certain times where I might be away for a month or whatever. Aye. No, the music will still go. It never goes out. I think that's why a lot of bands they say, right, that's our final tour, and the final
Right, and
tour.
then
I don't think they say what year the
10
final
years
tour is
later
on. Aye,
they tour again.
but anyway, so no, if you enjoy it, you've got to keep doing it as long as not interfering with family life,
Yeah,
and
yeah, of
that can be
course.
that can
Well,
cause
I think that's
problems.
the same with me. I don't think music will ever leave me. It's been something that obviously started as a kid and just kept going with, even when the band broke up and stuff. I always made an effort to get into the studio when I could, and then Chris, one of the members of the band, he got me into making stuff on the laptop. So I've always got an avenue or an area where I can do it. I guess that it's just time, really. Finding the time. Family life is one of those things that takes up the time. But look, we might as well end it here. I just want to say thanks to yourself. I mean, thanks for doing this with me. I know um, it must be a bit weird, doing a recorded podcast with your son. But I appreciate you coming on, doing it, and sharing your stories and sharing
My secrets
your
are some of my
information.
secrets.
And well, we'll leave it there. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you do enjoy it, then just keep your eyes peeled. There'll be more podcasts to come. And thanks everybody.
All right then. Bye for now.
Bye for now.